We talked about the political climate that we are in and this division that we now have between left and right, and really in so many ways how this is really a false division between the people, and that a lot of this is spread by the media. We talked about the difference between journalism and media, and how the media as a form has to do with this huge conglomerate of financial driven economy at the center of it that utilizes journalism in both good and bad ways to kind of create this thing that many of us think of as a monster, and how that affects how we consider ourselves as citizens, how do we consider ourselves as the people, and how we consider the government. One of the things that I always find ironic is that we talk a lot about the government here in the United States of America.
No, complain.
We complain a lot about the government, when in true actuality, we are the government. And so, we get into this kind of sense of, are we or not, are we not, right? Is this other powers that be that really are in control, or do we as common citizens have some sense of power, authority, influence over what happens in our lives and the decisions that are made? I think going back to the Founding Fathers, coming back to things like Constitutional Convention, they were wrestling with these very ideas. What does it mean to be a government? What does it mean to have a federal government? What does it mean to have states and to allow those states to still have some level of sovereignty over the people who live within their bounds and borders? And I think as individuals, we feel that same tension as well. Where do I end and you begin? Where does my sense of influence over us as a people, where does it begin and where does that end? And what sense do you as a person have influence over my life? And are we able to come together and have a conversation? Are we able to dialogue? Are we able to discuss? Are we able to even fight and still be able to continue to function after those kinds of conversations, discussions, and fights? That's what this whole thing is about. And particularly in this election year, where it's certainly the roughest one that I have seen in my own lifetime, and as I talk to many of you, as you have shared in your own lifetime, we begin to consider, how do we go about doing this, and how do we engage as citizens, and how do we do it in a civil way, and is civil discourse required for the United States of America to be what the Founding Fathers intended and what they envisioned? And these are big questions. I'm not sure that we can definitively answer them, but I think we can get at some level of confidence as we approach this subject. And so today I want to talk about we the people, particularly the preamble to the Constitution. Here's an interesting thing about the preamble. It wasn't voted on initially, right? I mean, it was voted on as part of a larger document, but it's not like the Constitutional Convention sat down and debated the lines of the preamble of the Constitution. James Madison and a few others sat down and wrote this thing out. And they attached it to all the things that they had deliberated over and debated on over the many weeks beforehand. And it just became part of the document. And many of us find it to be beautiful. It's wonderful language. It's huge in its scope and its vision. But it really was not something that people sat down and deliberated over. And you can see why, because very few things that are beautiful are deliberated over. You know? Usually when we start doing that, we compromise our language to a point where everyone can accept it, but no one goes, wow, that's really what I wanted right there. And so in some ways, it's this beautiful intro to the Constitution In other ways, it doesn't have a lot of power to it, though. When you look at the court system, the Supreme Court especially, and their view of the preamble, is it sort of gives them a sense of the interpretive direction that the founding fathers had for the Constitution, but its scope is so much larger than the actual pieces.